It's a great honor and privilege to be here as a keynote speaker at the Proudly Public Awards. I myself come from a public schooling background, and that's where I was educated. So it feels just absolutely wonderful to be speaking to you here today. My name is Yalda Hakim, and I'm a BBC correspondent and chief presenter at BBC World News. I believe deeply in this form of storytelling, and I hope that I can continue to do it for a very long time. My earliest memory of life really was when my family arrived in Australia and settled in Australia as refugees. My father was studying architecture in what was Czechoslovakia at the time, and he was away for 7 years and he returned to Afghanistan. He had 2 small children. And soon after I was born, he was conscripted into the army twice before he decided that this was not a country that he wanted to raise a young family in. So in the dead of night, with the help of people smugglers, they traveled over the border or overland, really, which took about 2 weeks to arrive then into Pakistan, where they spent a couple of years before the generosity and kindness of an Australian family meant that we were able to have another opportunity at life, a different life. And that is really how my family ended up in Australia. The one thing that my father especially continued to reiterate was, we want you guys, all of me and my siblings, to make the most of the education system in this country. Take it with both hands, and develop a love for learning, develop a love for education, and make yourself a lifelong learner. And that is the privilege that is afforded in a country like Australia. And that is something that you should feel proud of being a part of and embracing. And my education has taken not necessarily a very straightforward route. So I knew, based on what I was told at home, that one of the requirements was that my parents expected me to go to university. And I came through the public schooling system. And I think one of the things that makes me a great advocate for the public schooling system in Australia and elsewhere is that you really do sort of develop a sense of being around people who are from all walks of life, from all communities, all backgrounds. So that in turn has really helped me shape my understanding of the world. But I sit here and my understanding of the world, and when people talk about certain things, I don't feel detached, because I may have had a friend who was from Syria, or I may have had a friend whose family had come from Iraq, or I may have had a friend whose family had had a really extraordinary background of being an asylum seeker and seeking refuge in a country like Australia. And I went into their homes, I met their families, I was very much part of their lives as much as they were part of mine. And I feel that has not just grounded me, but also helped me and my worldview be shaped. There's a mix of people, and therefore the education system has to tailor for people who have come from all sorts of experiences. And you hear those conversations around you. I remember as a 12-year-old in Australia, when the Taliban first swept to power, one of the things that I felt so passionately about was the fact that girls had been denied an education. And that room was given to me in my schooling environment at high school to talk about it, to stand up in front of the class and discuss and reflect, and felt very privileged to go to the school where we had a farm. We were able to, each student was able to plant things and have a plot. And this really was a wholesome, organic environment that I grew up in. And of course, I had my fair share of challenges at school, but what I felt was that the teachers around me, the people around me, really encouraged what they saw at the time and how they described as leadership qualities. And I remember being part of the SRC, the Student Representative Council from primary school right until I was made a prefect in high school. And I was part of, I was a house captain at school, where I was representing my school at various different sporting events. I was a library monitor. I mean, any badge I could get, I was huge on badges. So, my uniform, I took great pride in ironing my uniform every morning and then putting my badges on every morning, in a row on my lapel. And it's something that my parents were very proud of, that they would come to award ceremonies at school, and I would be the MC. I was part of the choir, and in many ways, I just fully embraced what my parents told me to do: be part of everything, engage in everything, be part of the sports events, and be part of the singing groups. And I wasn't necessarily the best at any of these things, but I was part of it, and it was something that was really recognized and encouraged by my teachers. And if I think back to a teacher or someone who was perhaps one of my first mentors, someone who guided me and was really quite an important role model and influence in my life, I'd have to say it was my grade 4 and 6 teacher. I had the same teacher twice, and his name was Mr. Rue. And then as an adult, I realized his actual name was George, so George Rue. But he'll always be Mr. Rue to me. And he still is very much engaged and involved at Parramatta West Public School, not teaching anymore, but he's around and involved in the community and at the school. And I remember, his sort of belief in me, and he sort of always just threw me into the deep end, even when I felt shy about standing in front of a room and speaking. He would say to me, "You can do it. I know you can do it, and so therefore, you will have to do it. And I've chosen you." And so therefore I want you to do it. So I think that, but for me, it felt like he was speaking directly to me and conspiring and plotting with me to get to my goal. So Mr. Rue played a huge role in my life, and I understood the importance of a mentor. I established the Yalda Hakim Foundation in 2018 at the request of the American University of Afghanistan. They phoned me and they said they wanted to launch a scholarship in my name. And, my name virtually belongs to the BBC. So I had to check this out with the BBC, and they sent actually a team with me to Kabul to find out what this was all about and whether it was something that we wanted to engage with. And when I got to the university, I was so impressed by the young people I saw. They put on a debate for me, they had speeches, they had put on an entire event. And I saw what they were doing at the university, that I decided to turn the scholarship that would be something that they would just fund and support themselves to establishing an actual foundation where we would raise funds to support the most underprivileged women and girls of Afghanistan, those who had the talent but not the means. And so in many ways, when I think about what happened in Afghanistan in August of last year after it fell, those young girls and those young people became the motivation behind my foundation swinging into action and evacuating several hundred people from the country. And they became the source of inspiration for us establishing the largest scholarship program for immigrant students in America. So we've now established 250 fully funded scholarships across the United States. I also have 4 scholarships here at Oxford University. I have several at Georgetown in Doha, in Qatar. So we've suddenly just expanded and exploded, certainly in the United States, and I hope that one day I can do something quite similar in my home country, Australia. The advice that I always gave them is the advice that was given to me by my parents, was that this is an opportunity. Learning is always going to be a part of your life, and you should make it a part of your life. You're never too old to learn again, to try different things, and that is something that they've taken on, and I've now been part of their journey from setting things up for them in Afghanistan and for them to embrace that, to the fear of them losing everything when the Taliban swept back to power, to evacuating them and seeing that they needed and wanted to continue to study. And many of them did, even when they were in transition in Albania and at the American University in Iraq or in Doha in Qatar, they were still doing online learning. And that just gives you a sense of the fact that they didn't want to lose their connection to their education. I'm often inspired by young people, more so than sort of many of our established world leaders who I sit down with, I interview. I meet people who appear successful, but it's the young people, it's the curious minds that I'm sort of always drawn to. And so be curious and take the opportunities you have with both hands. And the other thing two other things I would say, which one of them was what I learned from my father, was to build experience through work experience. You are no job is too small. I remember when I was doing work experience at SBS, I said, I don't care what I do. I'm happy to lick stamps. I just want to be in this environment. And from 1 year of work experience alongside studying and being at university to coming full circle, and after 7 years presenting the show that I was doing work experience at, Dateline, that just makes you realize that dreams do come true. And I was the work experience kid who ended up presenting the program. So work experience, and something that my father always did until he became a chartered architect and until he had an established job. He did work experience. And the other thing I would say is to look for mentors. You don't have to go up to people and say, now you are my mentor, but look at people around you in your community, outside of your community, who you can tap into, ask advice for, seek advice from. They may have wisdom and knowledge and understanding of life and the world and their own path. And just one of those things may help you in your path. So the one lesson that I think I would take away from my upbringing and give to all of you is to embrace learning, to embrace education, and to find your point of difference, which is what I did. I realized I spoke several languages. I realized that the cultural background I came from was different to how the mainstream viewed as the main cultural background. And so I took all of these things and I made my point of difference something that was celebrated and a virtue. Thank you so much.